Thanks everyone for coming, appreciate it, and thanks for having me here. I was at Star Canada. Did anybody make it out to the Star Canada show? At least I know one in the front seat did, so front row did. All right. So that's the testing show, software testing, and I forgot what the R stands for, but it was just held at the Westin, and you missed out on the free pass day. So, all right. Okay, well, let me put this into slideshow mode, and we'll go ahead and get started. The last time I ran PowerPoint, Microsoft decided right in the middle of my presentation that I needed to do an update of my software, so we'll see what it says this time. All right. So this talk is 7 steps to pragmatic mobile testing. It is focused on how to improve your mobile website or your mobile application testing plan, what are the different things you need to be concerned about, how to make a better test plan, and how to make sure that you're moving toward automation. And so these are steps we put together. We have it in a white paper also available on our website. So you can, after the talk, download the white paper. Of course, it is being recorded, so you can watch the video too, again, if you would like. The 7 steps are here on the slide. Knowing your user, knowing your application, knowing your test matrix, knowing your device matrix also, moving toward automation and how do you automate, and then knowing the performance of your application or your mobile website, and knowing what are your edge cases and the edge for your company. Just a show of hands here, how many people are working on mobile for web, like the M dot of their version of their website? Okay, and everybody, oh, a couple people, okay. And then others are mobile applications themselves, native iOS or mobile app? Okay, all right, great. Well, for those who saw the eye candy on the wall, I'll describe that a little bit. That is actually monitoring one of our customers' websites, and I'll use that for how to look at some of the data that applies to mobile. So a lot of things are impacting our lives as testers. Customers are going mobile. Everybody's got a mobile phone in their pocket. They have an iPad. They've got, the desktop is not the only way we access content anymore. So test plans are getting expanded by having more devices and more things we have to test for. And at the same time, we've got shorter product cycles. If you look at some companies that are doing web releases multiple times a day, not just multiple times a week, the days of, when I first started programming way back when, products would have long life cycles, release cycles like 18 months or 12 months, so it was the annual release, and then in between that were just the dot releases. Now it's, what are you gonna get done during this sprint? How many people are working at companies with a sprint that is just 2 weeks long? Anybody trained? So in 2 weeks, you know, there's only 10 working days. Well, if you count the weekend, you've got 14 working days. So, you know, and what always gets squeezed the tightest? Quality. You know, the engineers take a little bit longer to build a feature, so these shorter product cycles are killing. YouTube, Walmart, and Geico last year updated their apps between 20 and 25 times during the year. So they were updating it with every sprint cycle. So that's full release, you know, with all the full testing that's required. Just, you know, a lot of work for the developers and a lot of work for the testing teams. And then, of course, there's the pace of new devices. Apple's already talked about iOS 9, which means some new devices will be coming out in the fall. Google's talked about Google M, and that means more new devices will be coming out there. So there's just more and more devices. Luckily, Windows Mobile, if you saw on the graph before, they're not doing so well, so that's one device maybe we don't have to test for right now. Maybe Microsoft will do better with Windows 10 and somehow get that together for mobile too. So just the number of devices coming. Also, what we're testing, we're not just having to do functional testing. Of course, the apps have to work, but they have to work well, because the other reason that people get frustrated with your mobile website or your mobile app is if the performance isn't good. And with every great web and mobile app idea, there's someone else who's probably just right behind you and is your competition. And if your app is not performing well, then people are going to be looking at using their app. So a lot of stress on the testing teams. Also, analytics and analysis. We need tools that will help us give data that is actually actionable, not just what's wrong with the application, but helping me to figure out how I can fix it and where to target my work time. So, step number 1, knowing your user. First and most important for your application or your website is who is going to be using it. Is it someone who's young? Is it someone who's old? What are they? What time of day are they going to be using it? Are they using it as part of their work life? Or are they using it for enjoyment afterward? Are they using it during the work week? Or are they using it on the weekends? Are they using it for short periods of time or for long periods of time? If you're weather.com, you just need to check the weather quickly and then you might go away. I don't really watch the videos on weather.com, sorry. I don't read the commercials, sorry. I just want to check the weather. What's it going to be like today, and do I need to bring a raincoat? If I'm using a driving app, of course it's going to be open for every minute that I'm driving on my way here. I was in Toronto last week, and horrible thing happened. I was driving on a highway that was a double layer highway. All of a sudden, I lost GPS completely. It's like, oh, I don't know where I'm going to be turning left. I don't know where I am. Had to drive out from that covered highway to figure out where I am. That's also part of how is your app going to be used. You need to know that for your testing plan. If you only test inside of your office, you're not going to be encountering the same situation as the users of your application. So where is your user? What time of day are they using it? How long are they going to be using it? Where are they using the application? What are they trying to accomplish with it? Are they trying to accomplish something very quick and dirty, or are they trying to work on something that'll be long and time consuming? Are they reading articles, reading a book? Is it an immersive experience? If you don't know the answer to any of those questions, hopefully you have a product owner who does. And hopefully it's been written down and it's not just something you have to assume. Of course, you can also do market research, user focus groups, and then you can, for any assumptions that you make here, you can test your assumptions with real user monitoring that will tell you who your users are, what devices they're using, what versions of those, et cetera. All of the detail comes from a real user monitoring tool, which is what I had up on the screen before, and we'll go looking through that. And since we are a smaller group here, if you have questions along the way, I'm happy to say stop, but we can also ask at the end when you've seen them all. You also need to know your application. What is the application trying to accomplish? What is an end goal of this application? What are the users going to try to do? That way you can measure if it is succeeding at that. If it's to fill out a form to submit on your website or to submit to as content, did it accomplish that? Did it give the customer directions? Did it give the user the data that they're looking for? So you have to know whether it's accomplishing what it should be doing. I was using an application that didn't quite work right. I fly a lot on Southwest Airlines, great prices on their tickets, but if you haven't flown Southwest, they don't give you a seat. They give you a number. But they won't give you the number and that's the number at which you board the plane. Number 1 gets on first, number 2 up to 100 and something, the last person in line to get on the plane. So I'm always using the Southwest application to get my number for where I'm going to get on the plane. I want to get on earlier, so I have space to put my bag in the overhead bin. But you only get that number exactly 24 hours before the flight. So I have an alarm on my phone. 24 hours and 5 minutes before the flight starts is when my alarm goes off on my phone. The mobile app, it looks really good until you try to find the check-in button. And if you use the check-in button that you encounter first, it asks you, what's your username, what's your password, what's your confirmation number for your flight? Like, oh, come on, you've got to know who I am already. I've used the app before. I used it days before I bought the airplane ticket. Why are you making me do these steps when I've got just 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute to check in for my flight and get that A1 or that A15 spot to get on the plane? But if you go on a circular route and you say, how many reward points do I have? And what's my future travel? Then it says, oh, here's your flight. We know exactly who you are. You're Tom, and you're flying tomorrow in 24 hours and 1 minute. And now here's another check-in button, and that one works just right away. So sometimes the way the app designer has built an app is not the way that the users use the app. And what you find when you're actually watching your users, just like these stairs, users don't always use the stairs. Sometimes they go around the stairs and they wear a path through your application that's not the path that the developer thought. And if you don't test that path, you'll be missing out if there's a bug along that way, as I did when, if I'm trying to log in to the Southwest app, I got really frustrated. I stopped there, I backed up, I went the other way, and I went around, just like this well-worn path on these stairs here. So you need to know not just how the app was designed to work, but how your users use your app. Also, if your goal is generating revenue, you of course need to be testing your path that takes your customers to revenue. And that path might be straight, it might be circuitous. When we're doing website monitoring for some of our customers, we found, or we displayed data to them, which when I tell you about it, you're all gonna say, oh, that's completely obvious. We showed them that 30% of their customers were coming to their website and immediately going to their My Cart page and doing a purchase transaction. Because days before, or even just hours before, they had put a bunch of things in their shopping cart and then they'd gone away. Well, websites consider you as an expired session when you go away. And then they just put your data into a database and save it away. And then you come back and you say, let me log in. And it remembers, oh, welcome back, Tom. You've got 5 items in your shopping cart. And then you can click submit. If you as a tester are not testing this different path of purchasing, coming to the website, logging in, and immediately purchasing, but you're only testing the come to the website, put an item in your shopping cart, purchase, and exit, you're missing a path that your customers are taking through your application. So you need to know the path that your customers are taking, especially those revenue-generating paths. You also need to look at the areas where your customers are having problems. What is causing them to take these alternate paths through your application? What is making it difficult? And that you can try to use your application yourself, but by monitoring your users is where you can get even deeper insights on what makes your application hard to use. So the big tip here, as you try to figure out how the app should be used, when you want to see how the app is being used, again, using a real user data tool, a real user monitoring tool is going to give you insights about how the app is being used and by whom, the answers to questions 1 and 2. So this was that application that I was running when everybody came in with the spinning globe. And this is our real user monitoring product. It's called Impulse. And it monitors for our customers. This is the same one that I had running live, which actually it's more fun to show the live one. Let me go ahead and switch back and just give a little bit of what this shows. So this is watching every customer who visits this company's website, whether they're on a mobile device or a desktop device. And this company is selling shoes right now, and people are visiting their website to look at their shoe products. And what you see with every dot is somebody loading data from their website, either an API call or a web page. So lots of people in the United States are loading web pages on their website right now or accessing a mobile app and loading things. People in Japan are doing it, people in China are doing it. I like this company because they have people all around the planet 24 hours a day accessing their website. And for every green dot, that's a great experience. That customer got a response within 3 seconds. If it was a yellow dot, it was up to 7 seconds, and if it's a red dot, it's more than 7 seconds. How many people like waiting 7 seconds, 10 seconds, 14 seconds or more for data to come in on a device? You know, nobody likes waiting. What do you do then? You think, well, I'm going to go over to Walmart.com, I'm going to go over to somebody else and see if I can get data about that too. So in addition to just how is the site performing now, this is a great app because from it you can also see where are the customers. Well, these customers are coming in from the United States, mostly the United Kingdom. China is their 3rd largest one, France, Germany, Japan, etc. So you can see what languages those customers are using, what locations they are, and start to see some things like what network speeds might be affecting these user experiences of these customers. Testing just in the United States, just in Canada, just at your desk is not going to be sufficient because the users are all around the planet. Similarly, if you're looking at what browsers they're on and what devices, lots of ellipses here. This is Safari, Chrome, and then Chrome Mobile, which is older versions of Google. And then, this is, by the way, mobile Safari, and then this is Safari Desktop. So their mobile users have now outnumbered their desktop users. So if they're just doing most of their mobile site testing in desktop browsers, they're completely missing out on what their customers are actually using. Likewise, you can see here, Windows is the #1 OS, but iOS and Android added together are more than Windows, and even more than, or almost equivalent to, I think, Windows and Mac. So it's only through great tools that are monitoring your real users that you get real data about your real customers and what their experience might be on your site. All right, knowing your test matrix. Not every test is equal, not every test is as important as another test. You need to prioritize your tests and what order you're going to make them in. Of course, your core functions and features of your application have to be tested. You also might be looking at what are the differentiators that make your application better than or different than or unique than the competitors who are right behind you. Those, of course, have to be tested. What are the edge cases? What are the things that are special, again, unique to your application, but might not, in an edge case, not so many customers are going to be using them, so maybe you can prioritize them a little bit lower. Also, which of the things, features of your application are complicated and difficult to test? You might have to prioritize those a little bit lower. Which of the things that are repetitive in your testing process? You might want to look at how automating those, because nobody likes to be doing the same repetitive tests again and again and again every day. Those are perfect things for looking at automating. So prioritizing your tests from most needed functions down to things that have lower priority. I think we all already do this a little bit, but this just gives you a little bit of a framework for how you might order them. You also might be looking at how long it's going to take to test this when it's manual versus to the amount of time it would take to automate it. Also, even just how much time you have. If you're trying to live in 2-week sprints and your testing cycle is 5 days long, you need to look at how to compress your testing cycle or how to compress the development cycle to give your team time to test. So knowing how many person days your testing is taking will help you know, again, where you might want to automate. And the tip, use this matrix to also look at which tests you might want to automate. Automating the repetitive ones, automating the time-consuming ones, etc., are the ones that can give you the best win. One of our customers was taking, I think it was 400 hours of total testing time for their application, and by automating it and running the tests in parallel, they were able to get that down to 4 hours. So it was quite a big win for them by not having it manual and serial. By turning it to automated and parallel, they were able to do their testing much more quickly. I'm curious, as quality people, hopefully nobody here has the fear of, if I automate things too well, I will be automating myself out of a job. Because the good news is, by automating, you just give yourself more time to test the things that you didn't have time to test before. So I hope that that's something you don't internalize. Which devices? There's hundreds and hundreds of devices on the market. Which ones shall you do your tests for? The good news is you can rank your devices by which ones are the active devices that your customers are using. A study by Perfecto Mobile, one of our competitors in the space, did a study and found that you'll get 40% coverage by just testing on 15 devices. So you don't need to test on 100 devices. You can actually test on a much smaller number. And if you want to get 60% coverage, you can test on, I think it was about 27 devices. So if you just Google for Perfecto Mobile and study, you'll see that. It's just good data for knowing you don't need to test on 300 devices in every carrier in every region. Of course, if you analyze the device usage of your customers, as I was doing on the Impulse graph that we saw before, you can see exactly what is the priority of your users in case it's different. Maybe more of your customers are on iPad and tablets than on iOS phones and smaller devices. How many of your customers are using desktop? How many of your customers are using different devices? That helps you prioritize in what order you're going to purchase your devices and which of the devices that you must test on. Weight your matrix according to the devices that your customers are using. And also, by monitoring every user on every device, you can also see then which are the devices that are having problems and which are the devices that are not. If you're monitoring how many customers on one type of device are completing a transaction versus on another type of device are not completing transactions, you can then dig further into what might be the problem area on that. And you might have to go back to manual testing for some of that. But it's only by watching your users that you can see which of the devices where they successfully accomplish something. They get revenue, they get the mapping information, they get the data that they're looking for, and which of the devices that are not returning that to your customers. Which of the devices that you should own. You can't own every device, so this will help you prioritize which of the devices you need to own, and which of the devices that you might want to just borrow or rent. Is anybody here using devices remotely over a device cloud or a remote device service? Okay, I'll introduce some of those to you. I can even show you a demonstration of one of those. We have a partner who has devices in the cloud, and it makes it real easy because you can't own every device in every geography, and especially every old device, and across every carrier. It's just too many. So you need to choose which devices that you'll own and which devices are optional but are still required for real user monitoring. This is another screen that came out of our Impulse product, and it does show what are the top operating systems that are accessing this customer's site. And so we see that for iOS, it was 18%, and Android, it was another 18%. And then the desktops here and Chrome, actually that's just at 0, so a very small number. But between iOS and Android, they've got almost 100 million user experiences across their website in just 1 month. And that covered 36% of their customers. The performance was pretty good. So about a third of the instances were getting a great 3-second response, 3 to 7 seconds, and worse than 7 seconds. So that lets them see that they're actually doing pretty well. So this company, they actually find their customer, they are using this product, they are monitoring their customers, and they are prioritizing based on what their customers are doing. You go down here to the bottom, like here's a 5-second average response time for a good old BlackBerry OS. Anybody using a BlackBerry still? Probably not. Poor BlackBerry, poor RIM. 130, let's see, yes, only 7,400 people or page load experiences being measured here. In effect, 0% of their customers. So even though the performance is quite red, they can probably ignore that, and this helps them prioritize it. And when the boss says, why are we giving a poor experience? Oh, it's BlackBerry, and oh, it's not so many people. We can ignore that. Here is our partner for a remote device cloud. This company is a division of NTT. They have more than 300 devices in the cloud, and they have them in 2 data centers across the planet. They have them in Tokyo, Japan, and in San Jose, California. And they have devices that are English and Japanese, Android and iOS, old versions of Android, new versions of Android, old versions of iOS, newer versions of iOS, many different screen sizes, many different devices, even across multiple carriers, KDDI, NTT Docomo, SoftBank, Sprint, AT&T, et cetera. So you likely can't go and say, hey boss, I need to go to Japan to buy a SoftBank iPhone because some of our customers are having problems on that device. You can easily, using our product and our partner here, rent that device for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, long enough to do a testing on that device. And when you're done with it, you just hit the return button, it goes back into the pool for somebody else to use it, and it's just like using it, because when you're using it at your desk, you've got a fast connection to the internet is fast to Japan, and then the internet to their lab in Japan is very quick too, or maybe just straight down to California. So it's just like owning the device, but at a cost much lower than owning the device. You can just buy hours into this pool and use any of the 300 plus devices for as long as you need for manual and for automated testing. And this is just one of multiple companies in the market for this type of technology. Step 5, how do you automate? Everybody wants to automate, but it takes some steps to get ready. You have to know who your customers are, what your application is, what the devices are that you want to automate on, and then now looking for the things that you're going to automate. And there are multiple ways of automating. There are different tools on the market. Rule 1 for automating is just get started. If you don't get started, then you're already behind. Pick just one test case that you'll automate and set it up with your CI system. If you're using hopefully Jenkins or Bamboo or something for your builds, just connect it up to one test. Then it's that much easier to put in the second test and to put in the third test. Just stop putting it off. Get started with just one test. We have a product on the market. There are other products on the market. If you want to write your tests as code, you can do that in the tools that do that, Selenium and Appium. If you want to have a record and playback of your tests, that's the technology that we use, and I can demonstrate that afterward. And that gets you started very quickly. If your testers are not code writers, but they are very good at manual testing, then record and playback tools are very good because they can get started very quickly. But first, the rule is get started. Start with a simple test case. Don't pick your worst thing, but just get started with something simple. And then look at what are the tests that are the time-consuming tests. If it's a test that is done many times in your side of your application, that should be automated. Get that one off of your testing list so that your testers can work on something else rather than just repeating the same task again and again. Which ones are the mundane ones? The mundane ones, if it's a boring test that nobody wants to do, it'll likely get put aside, or they'll make errors while they're testing it, and then you'll miss out on some of the the things that you're trying to find in that mundane test. Also, what is the rhythm of testing? Is it something how often do you want to be doing testing? And some people only test once when it's time to do the release. Other people test only on the weekends, so then you get 2 test cycles per release. Some people test every night, and even more ideal is testing with every check-in of code. If you have the capability, you have automation set up, then every time somebody submits a line of code is a good time to be testing that developer submitted code that doesn't have any bugs, and then you don't have to reject that code back to the developer. But if a bug is found, that's the perfect time to send the code back to the developer. Hopefully you've all seen the statistic that the cost of fixing a bug gets higher and higher the closer to the bug that the customer that bug gets. If you can fix the bug in development, it's cheapest. If you fix it when the customer has already seen it, that's when it's already gotten very expensive to fix that bug, because now it goes to customer service and customer dissatisfaction and brand impact. So the big tip here, continuous integration is the goal here. Like I said, with tools like Jenkins, Bamboo, and others, being able to have a completely automated setup where every check-in results in immediate acceptance tests, and then every night deeper tests and regression tests. With automation, you can do that. It becomes more affordable because it's all automated. Step 6, performance. I talked about performance from the beginning. It's not just whether your app is functional and giving back the information within time, but how quickly is your application giving that data back to your customers. You want to have an app that performs well. And if you're just looking at the server side, you'll only see usually that your application is very fast, because inside of your data center, everything is ideal, everything looks great. It's only when you measure it from your customer's view that you can see where the performance issues are. How is the device actually delivering your app's functionality? Is it delivering it in a snappy way, or is it setting the spinner up and causing your customers to be quite frustrated with how long it takes? Some of the things that affect that are things that might not even be within your control, because if the customer's battery is low, there might be some CPU throttling that will be affecting the performance of your app, but you need to know how your app is affecting the battery. If your app is using a lot of CPU power, it'll be burning through the battery more quickly. So tracking the battery, tracking the CPU, even tracking how much memory usage your app is using, again, in the customer's device, is going to give you insights in how your app is performing. Our tool, Touch Test, does monitor these things while your app is running. We do a graph of the CPU usage during your test run, how much memory was in use, and how the battery was. This one was plugged in, so the battery didn't get drained at all. How many bytes were sent and received across the network, because this will result in how long the customer is seeing the spinner waiting for data to come in if you're sending a lot of data. So this will give you insights into how your customers are going to see your application, and this comes back with every test run. So you'll see this data, and if you see it getting worse with every test run, then you definitely want to address it. Of course, you wanted to see how those things are perceived across the common user paths, so that if you've got what your customers are doing 50%, 70% of the time, then you'll know how the app is going to look to them. Look at how quickly each screen comes up if you're on your website, or each page comes up. How much time, what's the time delay, and what's the source of that time delay? Is it a network latency issue? Is it a processing issue? Is it that you're just trying to do too much inside of each of the screens of your application? And when you do have an application that is talking to a back-end server, you want to look at both the back-end timing and the front-end timing, because each of them are controlled differently. The back-end timing is your application, it's the things in the data center, it's the things that you'll talk to your IT team and talk about them about how quickly the servers are responding, or maybe it's the web speed or the network speed between the servers and the customer, versus the things that are happening in the front end. When your application gets that data, how long does it take for your application to then process that data into something that the user sees? If they download a megabyte of information and it then takes 10 seconds to process it, maybe you should be downloading it as a half a megabyte and doing some processing while the device is doing another half a megabyte of download. So you'd be looking for different trade-offs of back-end performance and front-end performance. And of course, what is your application doing when the network goes away completely? This is a graph out of our Impulse tool that shows that about 90% of what customers see inside of your website, and typically also even in your application, is based on front-end processing in the device, in the desktop, in the mobile device, and only about 10% of the experience is actually based on your back-end servers. So, if your IT team says, "Hey, we're going to spend $100,000 and we're going to double our CPU speed in our server farm," like, okay, great. Well, that's going to be half as thick. Now, did the end user really see a difference? No, they only saw it go down just a little tiny bit. So without measurements like this, you won't know where you should be spending your time on front end versus back end performance improvements. Also, of course, you want to know how is the performance impacting the revenue that you're receiving. If people are not completing the process that makes your company money or that delivers the customer the value that they're trying to get out of your application, performance might be a big impact on that. The longer it takes for the data to come into to come in front of me, or for the application to deliver what I'm looking for, is definitely going to impact how quickly I leave and whether I quit out of that application and move into another application. So performance definitely has an impact on task completion, and there are tools that will show you how performance correlates to completing a task. And when you can't work on every test, prioritize your test to the highest revenue producing or the completion paths that you're trying to deliver. Those are the places that you should be spending the most of your time in order to get the most bang for your buck out of your limited testing resources. So one of the ways that you can test the performance of your backend is by load testing using a product like our Cloud Test product. You need to know that your backend servers are going to be able to deliver a good experience to your front-end application and at the volume of customers that you have. First, you also have to know what your volume of your customers is going to be. If you're running an application that's really popular during, say, World Cup soccer, you're going to know that during a game, it's going to be very busy, and after the game, it's going to be very quiet. You need to know what your volume will be during the game. If you're running something that's popular during Christmas time, then you need to estimate what your volume is going to be. And it's by using a load testing product that you can test your back-end servers and make sure that they are going to perform well at the levels that your customers are going to be hitting it. The worst thing is everybody's downloaded your application, they all want to run it, they all run it at the same time, and then none of them are getting the data that they're looking for, or it's taking a very long time for them to get it. This has happened many times. The FIFA app went down during World Cup, and everybody was frustrated. Nobody was getting the data they were looking for about the teams they were watching. The mobile version of BestBuy.com took down the whole BestBuy.com website on the day after Thanksgiving because they hadn't load tested the mobile version of their website enough to recognize that many customers would be using the mobile version of their website, not the desktop version of their website. Load testing, it's cheap, it's something that's easy to do. There are customers or products like ours that do it from the cloud. You just spin up a bunch of load against your website, and then as soon as your test is done, you spin it right down, and your bill is very small because it's all based on Amazon, Google, Rackspace, Azure, and these guys, the great thing is they're all competing against each other to bring the prices lower and lower and lower. So the savings, you get the savings when these companies compete against each other. Lastly, know your edge. Understand what is your goal in delivering this application so that you can prioritize and know ahead of time how much time you'll have to do what you want. Is your product one that's going to be dependent upon a very specific time to market? No matter what you do, you can't move Christmas. So if your app has to be out by Christmas and you need to make some sacrifices, you're very time bound. Maybe you've got an application that is a new feature, a new function, and something new to market that you want to bring out, but you can wait. You can extend your testing time until you get it right. That will help you prioritize that when you need more time. Is your app something that you're trying to be competitive and catch up to or pass a competitor? That's going to prioritize how quickly and what you have to, how much testing you'll be able to do and in what time period. So know what your strategy is going to be and how that will drive how much time you have for doing your testing and how much time specifically you also have to assign to test automation. If you are limited on time to market, that's going to limit, of course, how much time you have to develop automation tests, how much time you have even just to test in general, for example. So that in a nutshell was the steps of knowing your user, knowing everything about your application and how the users are going to be using it, know your matrix of the tests that you want to run and have time to run, knowing which devices they run on, knowing how to get toward automation, measuring the performance of the application and from the user's viewpoint, and knowing what is your edge in developing your test plan for that. So hope I didn't go through that too quickly, but those are the 7 steps as we have identified them to helping you prioritize and test your applications well. Like I said, we do have some product. I definitely have time for some questions. So
when you're doing your load testing, are you running those headless tests on the back end? Are you basing them on day in the life, or are you doing individual atomic tests to generate load? What's your approach to that?
Yeah, so for load testing, the question was, are we doing day in the life or atomic? Our load testing tool and many tools can both do things that are a pre-scripted use of the application by monitoring. For us, like we will monitor what is the web traffic between the mobile application and the backend services, and we'll measure that, we'll detect what it is, and we'll turn that into a script, and then we'll run it again and again. So if there are 7 paths through the application, we'll suggest that they record what those 7 paths do, what requests they make of the server, and then what data comes back, and then we'll run those 7 tests, and even at different percentages based on what the users are going to do. And the way we know also what the users are going to do is by monitoring them with a monitoring product like the Impulse to see what are real customers doing with your application. How are they using your website? How are they using your mobile application? Which APIs are being called? So you can build a real test that, like I said in the shopping example, will catch the day in the life of people who are putting something in a shopping cart and then going away and coming back and rehydrating that shopping cart and then purchasing. There's functional testing, which of course has to be done, and where you have your specific cases, and then there's the load testing, and the two have to be balanced together. So, sure, good question. Go ahead.
Show us a demo of the mobile iPad to the application.
Yeah, so we did, like I said, we do have a mobile application that I can do a quick look at, and I can just generate a mobile test right here on my iPad sitting next to me. Our product, again, is called Touch Test. It runs in the cloud, so it doesn't matter whether you're on Windows or Mac. You just connect up to our server. I've got an iPad here. The iPad, I've opened up Safari to a web page. The web page is running on our server, and I've got it over here. Oops, let's make it smaller. So everything that I do on the iPad, you'll see that I can do here. It's just being mirrored onto the screen. If I want to generate a new test, it's quite easy. I'll just say I want to generate a new clip. Our test is one of those that does record of what I do in the application for easy playback. Again, it's great for people who are manual test generators and don't know about how to program in Ruby or C++ or C# or Objective-C or Java. It just will run everything that I'm doing. Asks me first which device I want to create the test on and which application I want to create the test for. Let's move this over for a second. And I'm going to say I want to record the Southwest application, which is one that I've got right here on my iPad. My favorite app, because it's the one I use every time, like I said, for checking into those apps, or checking into that website. So now everything that I do on the iPad, you'll just see reflected on the screen there. I'll say continue as a guest. We'll check flight status on flights between, let's see, I'm going to take a flight tomorrow from Seattle. And I'm going to end up down in San Jose. Let's see, San Jose. And everything that I've been doing, you see, is actually being recorded here. Different taps. If I do scroll gestures, if I do a complex drag, we'll record that. But all this has so far been pretty simple for just making the application, recording what I've been doing between typing and tapping. I'll say look up, click that button. There's the information there. And right there, I've got a test that will now do all of these steps. I might want to see that certain information has come back on this screen, so I could do a validation now to say, did the app run correctly? So here on, say, this tap action, I could say, hey, as soon as that's happening, could you also check the screenshot? Just to make sure that it looked right. And so I will pop up this list of different things. Tests, just running a test isn't enough. You actually have to verify that the result was correct. So that's what I'm going to do here. What you see is we have a very long list of things you can verify, from even is an element of the right color, is an element on the screen, is something in focus, is something out of focus. And so I'm just going to do a simple one. Like I said, we'll just verify a screenshot. And I'll just tell it to take a picture of what's on the screen right now. And it's just downloaded across the web from this device to Virginia, where our service runs, back down to my Mac. You see that there's a picture of the screenshot. That's the same thing that's up on the screen here now. And we'll go ahead and say to stop the recording here. And the iPad just went back to sleep, went back to Safari. There it is. And I'll just go ahead and tell it to run this. And of course I should save it. So now, just by having that connection, I did have to put a little bit of code inside of the Southwest app in order to have it make it observable and executable in this way, so that our service could run it. But now everything that I just did in that very, very quick and simple test is just being run back on this iPad, and you can see it up there on the screen too. So if you have manual testers who are just using your application on a device, whether it's iOS or Android, it's pretty easy to make an automated test just within a couple of minutes. We also have free versions of our applications, both our cloud testing product, which will let you do load testing, our touch test product, which will let you do functional testing, and our Impulse product, which will let you do monitoring of your website. We have $0 versions of all of those products that you can use forever, no charge. We will give you a call every so often to see if you want to upgrade to the higher levels. But you can do functional testing against a device, all you'd like, for no charge at all with touch test. Likewise, you can be monitoring your website using Impulse and looking at how your mobile traffic versus your desktop traffic and how's the performance, even down to. And the great thing is, without data, you really can't build good test cases. You really can't know where your errors are, where your issues are, until you start drilling down. Where these guys, their page load time, here's the number you tell your boss at the end of the day. It's like, our website's performing really well, 3.8 seconds average. And then you go, well, how's it doing in Africa? Like, oh, well, just ignore Africa. It's kind of red down there, so just ignore that. But if that's something that's going to be important for your company, it's good to have a tool that collects all of the data about every customer in Africa. So while they had 281 million customers visiting their website this month from around the whole planet, let's see, what country do we have here that's very red? They did have 2,700 customer impressions, and their average page load time was 10 seconds, quite a bit off from the 3.8 seconds. So Mali is quite a bit red. And if you wanted to improve the performance for the customers in Mali, well, all I have to do is click on that, and we'll go through the 281 million beacons that were collected for this customer and see what was it about Mali that made the performance bad for them. And the numbers all change when you're looking at just one specific set of data. We collect all the data, we save all the data, and we let you query all of the data, so you can then see, oh, in this country, Android is higher, and Android typically performs not so well. So the Windows is second, iOS is third, and then not very many people have Macs. So Android mobile is going to be much more important for people here in this country, and that might let you know that we should thin down our graphics if a customer is coming from this region, because they're going to be on a mobile device, and they're not going to need the same type of experience that somebody would need on a desktop. So having an M.dot version of your website, and maybe even a thin version of your M.dot version of your site, just for people outside of the region. You might also want to look at a CDN partner, because if you're serving everything from Canada, that's a long distance from Mali. So if you really want to focus on improving the experience for your customers in Africa, now you have the data that helps you make those decisions. So.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, I guess we can go ahead and, unless there are more questions or more, I could also show generating a load test, and we could try and crash my website at home that I generate hundreds of virtual users against it. So I can keep having fun showing demonstrations of things, but I guess we can call. Oh, go ahead.
When you need to test on a whole bunch of different devices, do you have any just time-saving tips for doing that?
For testing on mobile testing on you said on what?
On just a bunch of different devices.
A bunch of different devices. Well, the great thing. So again. That one test that I just generated here could be run against any other devices. In fact, if I bring up, I'll show all the different devices I've already connected to my test grid, different devices, let's see. So these are all different devices that I've had access to, including some in Japan. So these, like I said, our partner NTT, I could test against all of these devices simultaneously from the one test script. And places where I need to customize that script specifically for a device, like doing a screenshot compare, is going to need to be customized based on the exact number of pixels that are on that device. We can then just do slight customizations to that script that I just created, and then that test can be run simultaneously against all of these devices. Now, you can't do that for free. You only get to test against one device for free. But for a small amount more, you can then license more device accesses for simultaneous, parallel testing. And parallel is where you get your big win. First, automation, of course, and then parallelization. If you've got the devices you need in your lab, or you're renting them from the cloud, then you can be testing against those top 15 devices all at the same time and seeing the results back very quickly versus one, then the other, then the other, then the other. So I'd say automation and parallelization are the places you're going to get your big bang for your buck. So, good question. Yes, over here.
How useful do you find screen captures for mobile testing?
What about the screen captures?
How useful would you find it?
How useful are screen captures? Screen captures are great just for are all of the elements present and in the same layout that the user interface had before, to make sure that something didn't foul up. But with all the different resolutions, things are not always in the exact same position. So it's something you want to do kind of sparingly. Also, if you look at the screen that I did capture here, it had a date at the top of it. So our tool lets you do a couple of modifications. You don't have to test the whole screen. You can actually pick regions of the screen that you're comparing. So you can ignore the parts that have the date, the part that has the clock, the part that the parts that will be different and guaranteed to be different. Or you can even set a tolerance. I could say I need 90% of the pixels to match, and then I'll do a comparison there. But mostly you want to see, is a text field present? Can I put text in that field? Especially if you're using some sort of seed data where it's a certain username and login and they're looking for a certain result, then you can always check to see if that result is present, and then it's more custom and more unique to that use, and a screenshot wouldn't be so important. I'd say using screenshots more sparingly, because they do take extra work of capturing them on every device that you're going to be testing on, because every time the resolution is different. Most graphics compare tools don't know how to compare high res versus low res and actually seeing that they have the same contents. But they're looking for the elements of the screen, looking for the text fields, looking for the buttons, looking for the scrollers, looking that the data is there. That can be completely automated and completely device independent. And so, okay. All right. Well, good questions. Oh, another question.
You told about the Best Buy example about the mobile, so they didn't anticipate that much upload is coming, so it crashed down. So can you tell me, like, explain the scenario in the background, what's happening, and also, like, is that the same solution can be catered to the mobile, the desktop, or do we need to have a separate solutions for the mobile and the regular desktop from the backend perspective?
So the question is about how BestBuy.com, the mobile version of BestBuy.com came down and testing for it. On the back end, there often is a different, as soon as the the user agent from the device that's connecting, a different experience is being delivered to that user because it's a responsive web design, or they actually have an M.dot version of their site for mobile and a regular version of their site for desktop, so that they might be completely unique. And often you get a thing that says, you're visiting the mobile version of a website, if they're using more HTML than a system like Angular or other that give a better responsive design. For testing it, obviously, well, I'd say the measurements that we have are definitely showing, and from last holiday period, IBM did measurements that showed there were more mobile users accessing the web on the day after Thanksgiving than there were desktop users. There's obvious things like, well, when you're traveling, you're carrying your iPhone, you're carrying your iPad, you're not carrying your laptop with you as much. But it's obvious that everybody who has a desktop computer also has one or more mobile devices that they're using for testing. On the front end side, you definitely need to have test cases for both the mobile and the desktop version, and tools like doing functional testing and performance testing of both. Performance testing, it usually takes two different tools, one that's focused on mobile, one that's focused on desktop. But functional testing, you can use a product like Selenium, which can test in mobile and test desktop access to your browser or to your website. And you can use ours, which ours not only tests native applications, as you saw here with the Southwest app, but it can also test your website functionally this way also. The obvious answer is mobile is becoming more important than desktop access, because that's what everybody is moving to. That probably didn't answer completely your question. But,
so they didn't plan enough, so the strategy was not, the corporate strategy was not...
Best Buy, actually, I have a different talk of web and mobile perf fails where sites went down like that. I don't know why Best Buy they didn't publicly say how they had failed at doing the mobile testing there. I expect that they just didn't plan for as much mobile traffic as there was. And there are other customers. It really comes to, if you don't know what your customers are going to do, then you're probably going to guess incorrectly when you're building your tests. You're either going to have the wrong percentages of paths through tests, or you're going to have the wrong mix of mobile versus desktop testing. Another one in that talk that I give as an example is a shoe company, Designer Shoe Warehouse. They ran a sale for 3 hours, and their website could definitely handle the load of hundreds of thousands, even millions of women buying designer shoes from their website. Except for that 3-hour period, they decided to send their customers through a special path with a coupon code. The coupon code started at 9 a.m., it stopped at noon. If you didn't have the coupon code, you did not save the 35% on your shoes. So you really wanted to have that coupon code. You really wanted to buy those shoes during that 3-hour period because you saved a lot of money on expensive designer shoes. Guess what they forgot to load test? The coupon code handler. The coupon code handler could not handle the hundreds of thousands of women who wanted to buy fancy designer shoes on that 3-hour period. So they generated artificial demand during a 3-hour period on a part of the code that had not been load tested to the level that they needed it to be tested and compatible for their customers who came through. The site went down, lots of frustrated people who could not buy the designer shoes for that 3-hour period. So if your marketing team comes to you and says, we really want to do something that's special and it's for a limited period of time, like we're going to run a Super Bowl commercial, and we're going to put our URL at the end of the Super Bowl commercial. We're going to have everybody log into the website at the end of the Super Bowl commercial. You really better load test exactly what it is that's going to happen at not just the level that you expect, but at maybe double the level that you expect. Because when BestBuy.com went down, well, first when mobile BestBuy.com went down, they had to take down BestBuy.com in order to fix mobile Best Buy. So their site was off for hours. Well, then what do these poor customers do who are looking to buy some equipment? They went to Amazon.com or they went to Walmart.com. What if Walmart.com had only tested their volume at, well, we only expect 1 million or 10 million customers, and then up come another 2 million customers who were Best Buy customers. If they go down when these additional 2 million customers come along because they didn't expect them, then that's embarrassing for them. Then Amazon gets the volume. So whatever you think your volume is going to be, multiply it by another 50%, multiply it by another 100%. The only way you'll know where your site fails is by pushing it to the point that it fails. And with generating load from the cloud, it's as cheap as anything to generate. If your typical user's use would be 100,000, double it to 200,000. If your typical use is 1 million, then doubling it to 2 million, it's really not that expensive to double the load. And then you will find where your site has problems. So. Okay, that's a good question. All right, well, I think that's it. We're happy to talk for more time. The sun is up for so light here, so it seems like it's early, but it's getting later, but I'll let everyone go home. Appreciate your attention, appreciate your time. Thanks very much.